Welcome to Beyond You, the podcast where we dive deep into healing, rediscovery, and the building the life you truly deserve. I'm Samantha, your host and guide on this journey. If you're ready to move past toxic relationships, reconnect with your true self, and create authentic connections, you're in the right place. We'll be having real conversations, sharing practical tips, and offering the kind of support that helps you just not survive, but thrive. Each week, we're unpacking how to heal from the past, rediscover who you are, and building a future that feels like you. So whether you're just starting your healing journey or been on the path for a while, let's do this together. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back to Beyond You podcast. I'm so glad you're here. We're about to dive into a topic that I know many of you struggle with after trauma, and this is rebuilding trust in yourself. When you've been hurt, it's easy to lose confidence in your decisions and second guess yourself, but learning to trust yourself again is one of the most powerful steps you can take on your healing journey. So today, we're going to talk about why trusting yourself feels so difficult after trauma, how you can start rebuilding that trust, and most importantly, how to feel confident in the choices you make moving forward. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about why trauma can make it so hard to trust yourself. After you've been through something difficult, whether it's a toxic situation, a relationship, betrayal, or any kind of emotional pain, you start to question your own judgment. You might find yourself thinking, how did I let that happen? Why did I see the signs? And suddenly every decision feels like a potential mistake. And I talked about this earlier within our other podcast where I didn't even know what color I liked at one point because I was so invested in what other person was doing that I forgot about myself. So trust, I've been there. After leaving the toxic relationship, I remember feeling like I couldn't trust myself to make any decisions because I was so scared of getting hurt again. So even little things like deciding where to eat or where to go felt overwhelming. It's almost like you start to feel disconnected from your own intuition. Well, as some people call it, your inner compass. So I want to just kind of break it down on what you can do, right? When it comes to just the first part of just recognizing what this is and how it's eroding your self-trust. So the first step to rebuilding self-trust is acknowledging that this doubt is normal reaction to trauma. It doesn't mean you're broken. And I hate when people use that word. You are never broken. It just means you're healing. So start by giving yourself some grace. And I know a lot of times we judge a younger part of ourselves, right? So we judge ourselves because we look at our younger self and we're like, you should have known but know they're going based on the person you are now, whether that's in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever that is, you are going based on who you are now and looking back and making judgments. And that's not right to do. Understand that you did the best you knew how to do at that time, whatever that looked like. So judging yourself for situations that you did during the time that you knew how to do, it's just not fair to yourself at all. So know that you made the best decisions you could with the information you had at this time. Okay, so please give yourself grace when it comes to this. So next I want to talk about the signs you've lost trust in yourself. Okay, sometimes it's not always obvious that you've lost trust in yourself. You might not even realize it until it shows up in ways that seem unrelated. Let me share a few signs that you've lost a connection with your inner voice. So you just have the information and see if this resonates with you at all. So I had a client who would second guess everything, from major life decisions to the simplest choices, like what to wear, where to go to dinner. She always asked other people's opinions because she didn't trust her own. Does this sound familiar? Losing trust in yourself shows up in little ways, like constantly seeking validation from others, avoiding decisions, or staying stuck in overthinking. And know that I did this challenge last year, and I do with my individuals I work with one-on-one as well, and also in my programs, is that I make sure they know that you have to have a time period where you're not asking for anyone else's opinion about anything. So I'm going to ask you, make a challenge for yourself for the next 7 days. You're not asking for no one else's opinion on anything, even when it comes to what you want to eat. You are not going to ask, what do you want to eat, right? I know that tends to happen in relationships or with parents. You're not going to do that. You're going to say, I feel like having some chicken. Do you want some? Or if it's something where you want to decide if you want to go somewhere. I talked about this in my last episode, where you really got to decide if it's just a yes for you that you really want to go, or if it's a no, and pay attention to how you feel and follow through. Even if you do not know what to do, follow through with your first decision first and then follow with your next, right? I believe I heard this somewhere where even if you choose between coffee and water, if your first choice is coffee, take that sip of coffee and then go take a sip of water. Like, go through with your first decision. You can always change your mind afterwards. So here's a quick exercise to help you check in with yourself. That's a little not as harsh as what I said, but if you want to go above and beyond, definitely do the exercise I told you at first. I want you to pay attention to how often you ask others for advice or approval before making decisions. Then ask yourself, what do I really want? What feels right to me? Start practicing tuning into your own voice first before you look for external validation. Now that we've talked about why self-trust erodes after trauma, let's get into the good stuff, how to rebuild it. This process takes time, but it's 100% possible to get back to a place where you trust your decisions and feel confident about your choices. I remember the first time I made a decision for myself after a toxic relationship, and it felt like such a big deal. I decided that I would take a solo trip, even though part of me was terrified or regretted, or that I couldn't trust myself to be alone. But here's the thing. Once I made that choice and followed through, I felt this shift. It was like reminding myself that I could trust my gut again. And nobody understood why I did it. I literally saw a trip from an event I went to the previous week and went to New Orleans with people I did not even know, and just followed through on what felt right for me. And I just had to stick with it. And I know sometimes your choices will not make sense to other people, and know that is okay. You have the right to make your own choice and follow through what works for you. And I knew that I would be taken care of based on just my faith and just trusting myself in that moment. You just had to see what happened. So let's break down some simple steps to rebuild your self-trust. I want you to start small. Step 1, don't worry about making huge life-changing decisions right away, okay? You don't have to do the solo trip like I did. Start with something small, like choosing what you want to do on your day off. That's only about you, and sometimes ask yourself the question, what feels exciting to me right now? And I just ask myself that every day. Like yesterday, when I just asked what feels exciting right now, I've been on this barista thing, making my own coffee drinks. And so I said that feels exciting, making my own coffee drink to see if I can do it, right? It's just so it can be something small, even such as that. So it could be something like choosing what you want to do, whatever that is. Or sometimes it's deciding not to answer your phone when you need time for yourself. So maybe it's something where someone's calling, and if it's not like a yes, I want to answer the phone, you're starting small and not answering it. The main thing is you're following through what you say you're going to do, and that's what's going on. Step 2 is kind of what I was talking about earlier, but keeping promises to yourself. Now this is big, right? But in the first one, I started small. So even when it comes to drinking water, they follow through drinking water. But now this self-trust grows when you follow through on the things you promise yourself. If you say you're going to take a walk, take that walk. If you commit to resting, actually rest. Keeping your word to yourself builds confidence. Okay, so step 3, reflect on past wins. Take a moment to think about the decisions you've made that did turn out well, even if they were small. Write them down and remind yourself that you've made good choices before and you can do it again. I asked you all on Instagram to send in your questions about self-trust. And I got this great one from a listener who said, how do I trust myself to make good decisions when I've made so many mistakes in the past? I love this question because it's something I hear all the time. First of all, mistakes are a part of life, okay? So allow yourself to know that you're going to make mistakes because that's how you learn. That's how life does its thing. When you make mistakes, you overcome them and you work through them, okay? So no one gets it right 100% of the time. And that doesn't mean you can't trust yourself. Think of your mistakes as lessons that helped you grow. Every time you learn something from those experiences, you became wiser and just had that extra experience under your belt. So instead of focusing on the fact that you made a mistake, focus on what you learned from it and how that knowledge will guide you moving forward. And there could be so many examples of this. It could be in this past relationship. If you saw that this person was constantly not being consistent, it shows the lesson that, okay, for me to be able to be with somebody, they have to be consistent and show up, and I can trust that they can show up. And that is something that's important. So really being able to listen to yourself to know that even if you do make a mistake, and not all the time we can tell up front how someone's going to be, allow yourself to know that at any moment that it doesn't feel right for you, you can always change your mind. A lot of times we feel like we're stuck, but we're never stuck. It just makes even staying the same is a hard decision. So know that you can be able to follow through in what feels right for you. So I thought about what can we do to help this process and tuning to your inner voice. I want this podcast that you're listening to be able to be that space where you just take some time for you and to learn more on how to just be there for yourself. So let's do a quick guided visualization to help you reconnect with your inner voice. If you're in a place where you can close your eyes and take a deep breath, please do so. If not, you can keep your eyes open or have a little gaze if close your eyes doesn't feel good for you. Imagine yourself in a peaceful place, a place where you feel calm and safe. Now think of a decision you've been struggling with, big or small. Imagine yourself making that decision from a place of confidence and trust. Picture it going smoothly with everything falling into place. Now ask yourself, how do I feel in this moment? Knowing that I made a decision that was right for me. Let that feeling of peace and confidence sink in. You have the power to trust yourself, and this feeling is something you can come back to anytime you're doubting your choices. One of the biggest components of rebuilding trust in yourself is practicing self-compassion. When you're hard on yourself for past mistakes, it's easy to keep doubting your decisions. But when you treat yourself with kindness and give yourself permission to make mistakes, self-trust comes back naturally, and you won't even notice it. It just will kind of guide itself into your daily life, right? As you just find yourself making decisions so smoothly and swiftly as you follow through what you say you're going to do. And it starts with the small things to lead to the big things. So please follow through with those steps that we mentioned before. I used to beat myself up for things I didn't even know or need to feel bad about. It wasn't until I started practicing self-compassion, really being kind to myself, that I began to feel confident in my choices again. Compassion isn't about excusing mistakes. It's about learning from them without the extra layer of shame that we tend to put on ourselves constantly. The next time you catch yourself being hard on yourself, stop and ask, would I talk to a friend this way? I'm guessing the answer is probably not. Be your own best friend in those moments. It makes a difference. So to sum up today's episode, here are the things I want you to remember. It's normal to doubt yourself after trauma, but it's not permanent. 2, start small with decisions and keep promises to yourself. 3, mistakes don't define you, they teach you. And lastly, rebuilding trust starts with self-compassion and patience. This week, I want you to choose one small decision that you're going to make for yourself without asking for anyone else's input. Then follow through on it and reflect on how it felt to trust your own voice. So if you found today's episode helpful, share it with someone. This helps for more people to get this information and to be able to share the message around of just having peace every day, even after trauma or any toxic situation. And don't forget to join us next week as we talk about building deeper connections and overcoming loneliness. Even when you're surrounded by people, you won't want to miss it. Thank you for being here and Beyond You. Remember, trusting yourself again is a process, but it's one of the most powerful things you can do for your healing. Next week, we'll dive into how to build genuine, meaningful connections with others, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.